You're watching the Expat Files. My name is Tane. Cycles. Cycles. A lot has been made of the book by Strauss and Howe called The Fourth Turning. Most of you have probably heard of this. The whole thesis is that human society moves in 80 to 100 year cycles. I read it. I didn't think much of it. It's presumptuous and vague, but the reason I don't like that kind of discussion of cycles is because on the good side, they're trying to identify a pattern. Okay, good. We'll come back to patterns in just a moment because it is such a blind spot for most people in the West for reasons I will explain. But on the downside, it creates that almost like astrology. I count that book in the same category as astrological kind of predictions. And the reason that I don't like it is because it inculcates a sense of fait accompli. The truth, of course, about human destiny, the lives of individuals, your life, my life, is that there may be some preset fate that you have to encounter. Certainly all the great philosophers recognized the concept of amor fati, as Nietzsche and others have noted, that you should love your fate regardless of what it is, even if it's nasty and brutal, because there's a wisdom in that. But when it comes to the fate of nations, there is clearly nothing that is fait accompli about what is taking place, especially in the West. And yet with that said, we have to balance those 2 points of view into something like a workable strategy for our lives. In other words, it was not fait accompli that the US had to go into Venezuela, for example. It was not fait accompli that the US had to send a 500,000 man army to the Middle East after the unpleasantness of Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. There's a lot of decision making that goes into creating whatever situation you have to endure in your life. And the reason I'm talking about cycles in this video is because this is something that most people probably don't know this about me. I spent close to 15, 17 years in medicine. And I had a very unique career in medicine. I never went to any kind of school. I never went to med school. I ended up with a license to practice medicine in Colorado by way of an apprenticeship that I did with an old man in the forest in Guatemala, of all places, who I met. The opportunity was there. He was an old healer, what's called a curandero in their culture, Maya culture. And he had traveled the world for decades and just studied healing systems. His education was somewhat more eclectic than mine turned out to be, but he did give me fundamentals to go deep into the oldest indigenous medical system, which is the Chinese medical system. But one of the things that you learn studying Chinese culture, and the best thing to come out of Chinese culture by far that almost nobody recognizes unless you've studied this particular branch of learning, is their medical system. Why? That's perhaps a topic for another video, but one of the best things, in other words, clinically, right, their diagnostic system is different. And because they diagnose differently, you can treat different conditions, i.e. you can treat chronic illness much better with the ancient Chinese medical system. Now, the other thing that I got out of studying Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy, Chinese culture at a really deep level, I am something of an expert on Chinese thinking because of my study of the Chinese medical system. And the primary thing that I took from that transcended medicine, which is a big enough gift by itself, is the recognition of cycles. We in the West, here I'm talking to most of my audience is in Western countries. If you're watching this, you're probably in the Anglosphere somewhere, or US, Europe, Canada, right, wherever, New Zealand, Ireland. And we do not have a natural, inherent, innate sense or recognition of cycles. Martin Armstrong, the finance wizard and a very interesting character in his own right, his story is quite something if you know anything about Martin Armstrong, made a comment the other day or several weeks ago that I saw in a podcast, and he's made this several times. If you've heard Martin speak on any podcast, you kind of get his message very quickly because he's just kind of repeating what he's done in his life. And one of the things that Martin said was, I never have to explain cycles when I'm talking to Chinese people. They understand completely that history does turn in sort of self-replicating, self-similar kind of fractal patterns where the past is very informative about what's happening today. And so there's very little recognition of cycles. And where we are in this cycle, and this is kind of the point of the video, What's unique about this moment, because in every pattern, in every cycle, there will be things that are very similar to the past patterns, past cycles, and there are things that are totally unique. What is unique right now about what's happening in the US, in the Western world, UK, France, Germany, right? Even Russia, right? Which is also a Western country. But in particular here, the US in particular, and Europe, the so-called free countries of the West, which look less and less free every single day. If you want my help internationalizing, right about now would be a good time to take me up on that offer. You can find the link below this video. You're going to need a plan B. You're going to need a place to go if things get too ugly and you just can't weather the storm. There are plenty of places to weather the storm. I'm here in Mexico now. We're just sort of flying by the seat of our pants. We don't have any plans. We're just renting and bouncing from place to place. It's a heck of a way to live and a great education and a tremendous adventure. Internationalizing your life is really about living your best life. You do not have to stay put in a situation that is not good for you. But with respect to cycles, where we are and the unique flavor that has jumped into the stew at this stage of this cycle, at this point in history, is that it is obvious, it is blatantly clear, it is bare naked on the table, cards face up in front of you, that the governments of the so-called formerly free Western world are absolutely working against their people. You can see this in Europe, where these unelected bureaucrats, Kaja Kallas, van der Leyen, van der Leyen, and others, notably women, interestingly enough, are all gung-ho to drive their countries to war. Not a single person in Europe wants a war with Russia, with the exception of the people trying to provoke this conflict. But also in the US, Trump was elected to deal with the immigration problem, cut the spending so we don't crash the dollar, and so that everybody doesn't end up ridiculously poor through the hidden tax of inflation, which is coming. It's here. It's already happening. Forget the government numbers. Forget what they're telling you. The CPI is a CP lie. It's not true that prices are rising at 3% a year, or whatever number they've released recently. Anybody who has to shop for anything knows that this is not true. And so we are living through a time where the unique moment is that the government hates you. The government is against you. Now, before I get a flurry of comments about the fact that how is that different from any time in the past? Look, it's true. The government has never been your friend. But in modern history, there was at least a pretext, a pretense. There was at least an effort to say that from the elite's side of the equation, they knew that their power derived in part from the consent of the governed, and the idea that you could get away with the kind of blatant larceny, and the Trump family has added, I don't know what the actual number is, several billions of dollars selling their crappy crypto coins, Trump coin, whatever they're calling it. And you can buy some of this Trump coin, freedom coin, whatever it is, and get yourself political favors. This kind of graft and corruption, this kind of just blatant, like, we have the power, we can do this. We want to topple a country, we can invade them. And they do have the power to do that. But none of this is good for you or me. The unique thing, and what I hope this video will do, is to help further the message and wake up even just one person to the fact that the government is not your friend. They are not here to help you. They are not looking out for your retirement with their Social Security Trust Fund, which does not exist. No money is sitting aside for you in that fund. It was all spent on wars and welfare boondoggles and every other imaginable asinine thing. And that we are living through a time where it's pretty plain to see, to anybody with eyes to look, that the government is out to get you. This is a dire set of consequences, to be sure. This is a very, very dangerous thing. This is a terrible development. But it's also very obvious, and it's very plain to see, again, if you will adjust your thinking to understand that the government is not looking out for you, they are out to get you. And because they are out to get you, you need to use what time and resources and brain power and imagination you have to imagine a life where you want to minimize the government's ability to adversely affect your life. The way that you do that is to create international structures where no single government has total control over your life. Remember, the government that is most dangerous to you is the one that's closest. For most people watching this, that's going to be in the US, but wherever you are in the world, your home government is by far your biggest risk. And they are desperate because they are bankrupt, financially and morally. If you think offshore structures like where to bank, how to invest in foreign real estate, and where to set up your foreign trust are difficult or complicated, they're not. That's not the hard part of creating an international lifestyle. The hardest part is the decision to go. That's why I wrote Secrets of the Expat Adventure, to share with you a deeply personal view of what happens when you decide to cast off the chains of a normal life full of predictable outcomes. I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but you quickly discover yourself living your best life, the life you were meant to live, instead of the one you're stuck with. Across 156 pages, I'll share the incredible adventure I've enjoyed because of my decision to leave my old life behind and create an international lifestyle. I lay out for you the consequences of remaining in a life or location where everything is familiar, contrasting that with the almost magical growth and gain that is possible once you decide to take the path of adventure. There's something deeply mysterious about choosing an adventurous life. Once you commit, helpers appear, and events seem to unfold in an almost magically choreographed manner. You find yourself learning, living, and loving your life in a way that you thought you'd lost forever. There is no financial gain that compares with the recovery of the best parts of yourself. Fortunately, the decision to internationalize is also a great way to get wealthy. I give you real examples of how much easier it was for me to find and profit from the real estate and other investment opportunities I came across simply by choosing to play on the very uneven playing field of developing markets. If you're worried about what's happening in your home country and you're on the fence about whether or not you should create your own plan B, Secrets of the Expat Adventure will give you clarity and inspiration to choose your own path of freedom and adventure. I promise you'll never look at your life the same way again once you discover what an international lifestyle can do for you, your family, and your wealth. To get your copy, click the link below this video. Government is force. Mao was completely correct when he said that the power of government comes out of the barrel of a gun. And because you're seeing the breakdown of institutions, Strauss and Howe did get this correct. The breakdown of institutions is what happens at a certain point in the cycle. We are at that point in the cycle. You can see it everywhere you look. You can feel it. I'm reminded of the clip of whoever this scumbag is, Mark Levin, hugging Trump in a sort of jovial manner, declaring that Trump is the first Jewish president, whatever that means. What it means is that whatever the people running Israel want, Trump will apparently accommodate. The institutions that you have been taught are democratically elected. We, the people, right, are looking out for the welfare of the population, are absolutely working against you at this moment. This is not going to get better before it gets much, much worse. And so this is the time in the cycle where you have to have the brains to actually take steps to protect yourself. And the way that you do that is to start to move your life into various jurisdictions where no single government has the power to shut down your banking, cut off your business, deny you access to payment processing, deny you the ability to come and go as you please, right? Second passports, third passports. Where if things really get ugly, obviously you're not going to stand your ground against an entire mob, a rampaging mob of angry people who are pissed because their food stamps got cut off and there's no more money, or that the money is completely worthless. And that is coming. Nobody knows when. Nobody knows how much longer the game will go on. In the end, the collapse of financial systems and whatnot may be the thing that saves us. If you don't have money, right, to pay for wars, it's going to be very hard to create one. If nobody wants to show up at your war, it's going to be very hard to have one. So the lesson in understanding the cycles of history, the cyclical nature of time, the cyclical nature of the human experience, where what happens is certain ideas get tried. You could say in 1917, for example, and the Russian Revolution kicked off, and there's a lot to be said about the Russian Revolution and who was behind it, who ultimately benefited, who paid the price. Maybe that's a topic for another video, but you could say that when the concept of the workers of the world unite, socialism, state-owned everything, communism, top-down control, centralization of power, that all of those ideas were novel enough that perhaps they could be excused. Perhaps you could say in some corner of your mind that the argument exists that they didn't know better. It hadn't been tried on a grand scale. They gave it their best shot. Maybe it wasn't nefarious at the outset. I doubt it. But let's just say, right, being very generous and giving the benefit of the doubt to the people who were behind that entire movement, which failed in spectacular fashion after 71 years of trying and ramming it down people's throats and gulag archipelagos and the murder of 60 million mostly white Christians in the Soviet Union. You could say that they didn't know better, but at this stage, you cannot say that those ideas haven't been tried to the nth degree and to the last drop of blood. And what happens in the cycles of human society is that dumb ideas that were tried, maybe in good faith, although I doubt it, come back around. Because the generations alive today don't know or don't want to know. The lie of socialism is the easiest example to think of because, again, obviously all this has been tried, right? Zoran Mamdani, a Muslim guy pushing a socialist kind of agenda, however ingenuous that might be. Let's pretend that he also is a serious person and he really believes in what he's saying. It's possible, but I doubt it. But the generation that voted for him, which was mostly young voters in New York who were pissed about housing prices, etc., are perfectly willing to fall for it once again. So it's not hard to understand how cycles in human society exist, but there's no part of it that's fait accompli. It's not that this has to happen. The cycle itself does not have to repeat with the same stupidity over and over again. When I hear people talk about the human condition, this is what I think of. The human condition is that we could be better than we are, but we're just not. And the reason that we're not is mostly because people are stupid, mostly because people don't read. I mean, if you read, say you just read Will Durant's whole series on the history of civilization, or Paul Johnson's work on modern times and history of the American people, or Stefan Zweig's The World of Yesterday. From any number of sources, you could get plenty enough insight to understand that what's happening today, number one, doesn't have to happen the way it happened in the past and failed, and also that these things repeat because the vast, vast bulk of the population at any given time is completely ignorant of what has happened before. It's a maddening thing to realize and very frustrating to understand that things could be so much better, but no, we're going to do the same stupid shit that didn't work before because, oh, it sounds like a good idea now. It didn't work then, but that's okay because we'll just try harder. It'll work this time. And so this is what we're involved in. And the thing that is really dangerous, and I'll leave you with this thought, the thing that's most dangerous right now is that your government is working against you. And they are working against you with all their might. And whether you want to, argue about globalist, transnational kind of organizations like the WEF, like the IMF, like the WHO, it doesn't matter how many you want to trot out. The same basic play is being perpetrated again. And so hopefully channels like mine, hopefully videos like this bring you to an understanding. There is no question that cycles exist. There is no question that you can learn from cycles of the past, and there is no question that you can choose a different path. But when the madness of crowds takes over, and let's be honest, we're living at a time of mass delusion. We're headed into a period of chaos unlike anything anybody alive today has ever seen. If you don't feel that, if you can't get that, if you don't see the evidence of that around you, just wait. But don't wait too long, because waiting too long has pretty serious consequences this time around. Okay, that's enough out of me. I hope you take me up on the offer. Give me you can find a link below this video if you want to schedule a free 15-minute call. I talk to people, absolutely free, no obligation, about your situation and about how you can structure yourself internationally so you avoid the worst of what's coming. You want to be alive at the end of the chaos, and you want to have your wealth. And we can help you with both of those, because if you need to relocate because things get ugly in your neck of the woods, then that's actually a pretty easy thing to do. I have plenty of experience. I favor the Americas. I really like the Western Hemisphere. I think it's the best place for people to ride out trouble. There's literally hundreds of places that you could ride out trouble in real style. We're here in Mexico City now. We've relocated to Mexico City. Fabulous location. It's a wonderful city. It might be one of the best cities left on earth. super prosperous. The area around Chapultepec Park is chock full of just world-class restaurants and tremendous culture, museums and music. Every single night you can do this. And so, and this is just one example, right? All throughout the Americas, where do you want to live? By the beach? You want to live in the countryside? You want to buy a big farm and be able to, friends who have bought huge areas of land, they have cattle, right? What do you want to do? What is the lifestyle that you want to live? That's what we cater to. This is not off-the-shelf, offshore international structuring. This is not one-size-fits-all plan B kind of stuff that a lot of people out there offer. You need to work with a team of people who will answer your questions, hold your hand, and give you white glove service all the way through. That's what we do. Okay, so if you want to schedule a call, please click that link. Also, I put together 2 books. One is a short primer. It's called The Bulletproof Plan B. This will at least get you thinking along the lines of here's how you would begin to structure. This is kind of generic advice in the sense that I want you to be aware of the 4 areas that you need to pay attention to. These are the 4 pillars that amount to a good offshore international kind of structure and lifestyle. Takes about an hour to read. There's no excuse not to make yourself at least educated on the fundamentals of what international living looks like. You can get that also at the link below this video. And last of all, I wrote a book called The Secrets of the Expat Adventure about my own journey, my own outbound journey, how I became an international, set up my own international lifestyle, which has rewarded me many, many times over. The comment that I get that I'm most flattered by from friends that I knew back in the day is that, look, I wish I had done what you did. I wish I had gone for it. I wish I had lived an adventurous, interesting life. I'm coming up on 30 years living internationally. I really left the US long about 1996, 97. And in all of that time, it's almost like I've wrapped several lifetimes into those 3 decades. And so this is about living your best life through what is absolutely going to be the most chaotic period of any of our lifetimes. And so check it out. You can find a link to that book. It's available on Amazon. But I think also we have a link to an actual page that'll let you get that. And it's a good story. You'll probably see something of your own situation. Mine was kind of unique, and I chose a different path early on. But check it out. And remember, your freedom begins the moment you realize nobody's coming to save you. Thanks very much. I'll be back with more good stuff.